All right, we made it back. We're talking about the NASCAR Cup Series at Talladega. Hopefully, you guys had a good, at least Cup Series, off weekend. But we're back, so we're talking about NASCAR again, which feels great. If you want to help us, you can like, comment, share, retweet our content. We're only 36 subscribers short of 1,000, so that is awesome. If you want to, access to the spreadsheets, they're over on X. It's at Fast Cars FM. We also post them for the Xfinity series and the Truck series over there. And then there's a couple of links in the support tab for PayPal and Venmo, just if you want to say, thanks and you had a good weekend. So when we get to Talladega, it is a super speedway style racetrack. So because of that, the main focus today is going to be place differential upside. We have 188 laps, so not a ton of laps, and it's pack style, racing. So the fast laps are going to be distributed, kind of randomly throughout the field. And yeah, we might see, um, single file trains, and there might be one or two drivers who lead a good chunk of laps, but generally speaking, dominator points really are not too much of a focus today. Um, when we get to these style of racetracks, typically, since everyone's so close together, if there are accidents, usually multiple cars are involved. It really um, tilts the slate, one way or another. However, we don't always get cautions, so don't expect a caution fest by any means. Especially recently with some of these fuel mileage races and these teams going half throttle and um, trying to just survive to the end and then really start racing. So hopefully we don't get too much of that today. I hope we get a lot of, two wide, three wide racing. That is my hope. But regardless, even if we do get a fuel mileage, quote unquote, boring style of race today, place differential upside is still going to be the main focus. So when we get to the driver by driver breakdown, there's a few different things I want to keep in mind. Really just the starting grid, right? I want to focus on drivers who start further in the field, who gives me the most amount of place differential upside, especially with, the increased chances of these guys wrecking out. If you have a guy that starts third or second that wrecks out and finishes, 25th or 28th, that's really going to hurt your line versus a guy that starts 30th that wrecks out and finishes 25th or 28th. It's actually going to give you positive points and you still have a chance of cashing. So really just trying to maximize, upside, maximize potential today. The other thing is ownership. So you'll see, there's some guys in the field like Chase Elliott, Ross Chastain, for example. Like these are good guys who start deep in the field that we know are going to see a lot of ownership. So, maybe for tournaments, maybe it's coming in a little bit under the field on Chase Elliott, maybe playing a little bit more of, someone that starts 27th or 28th or 31st or like someone right around that range who still has very similar upside to Chase Elliott, but probably won't see the same amount of ownership. So a couple of different ways you can go about today, but let's kind of walk through the drivers here. So you got Blaney, Logano, and Byron. Blaney and Logano are going to be very popular, almost kind of like Jesse Love and Austin Hill. Can they run well? Can they win the race? Absolutely. However, they both start, further forward in the field, so they do carry, a lot of risk for that reason. So, I think they're going to have good days, but when I get to these style of tracks, they just start too far forward for me really to have, a significant amount of interest. If I had to pick one between the two, it'd be Blaney just because he starts a little bit further back in the field. However, I would much rather play William Byron over both of these guys just because of where he starts. But again, even Byron for me isn't really like a focus play just because he starts kind of mid-pack. There's some other drivers who start further behind him that offer more place differential upside. So those are guys I'm going to have more of. Um, Hamlin starts 13th, pretty good on these style of tracks, but starting 13th is just kind of a tough spot for him. A little bit of upside, but more of a tournament play. But once you get to the Keselowskis, the Larsons, this is really where my interest level starts to increase. Really, guys, 20th on back. So Keselowski starts 22nd, gives you some good place differential upside. Usually works pretty well with the Fords here as well. Known to be kind of an aggressive pusher, wants to be, up near the front. So I kind of like that. All right. Just checking. I got some people coming today, making sure they're not here yet. Larson starts 25th, gives you some place differential upside. Usually doesn't run too well on the super speedways, at least results wise, but again, starts 25th. So that's really the main focus for me is really just trying to figure out who gives that place differential upside, and Larson gives that to us. Christopher Bell, pretty interesting tournament play. I really don't think that many people are going to play him. So, if you're trying to get aggressive or different or, you know, go after the big prize, you're going to have to sprinkle in some of these more aggressive style of plays versus just trying to hit the cash line with some of the safer place differential upside plays. So Bell's interesting. I don't really think he's going to get that much ownership, so it makes him an interesting tournament play. Elliott, on the other hand, probably will see a lot of ownership. He might be the highest owned play today. He's going to be popular for cash games and tournaments just because of A, who he is, B, the equipment that he's in, and C, where he starts. Also, pricing doesn't matter either. So if you have a lot of money left on the table, don't worry about it. Um, Kyle Busch starts a little bit too far forward, starting second. Austin Cindric, you can kind of throw him in the same boat as Logano and Blaney. Gives you some place differential upside, should run well, but he carries a lot of risk starting seventh. So if you think, we get a clean race or the guys that should run well, finish well, Cindric should project well. But again, if he gets in an accident or doesn't have a good day, if he finishes like 20th, 21st, even 18th or something like that, like it's really not a good day for you. Tyler Reddick starts 26th, gives you some good place differential upside there. We like that. Briscoe, Wallace, and Bowman, I think, are all interesting. Kind of like Byron, they give you some place differential upside, but aren't really, deep chalk plays by any means. So they're kind of interesting. Like if you're trying to get a little bit different without getting crazy, I think you can make a good argument for getting, some Briscoe, some Wallace, and some Bowman into your lineups today. Chastain, another one of those chalk plays, very going to be very popular, like Chase Elliott, mainly because of where he starts. McDowell runs pretty good on the super speedway, style tracks, but starting 14th kind of minimizes, his upside a little bit. Stenhouse should be very popular. He always starts deep on these style of tracks and, tends to run well here. Not really getting the Busher, Gillen, Gibbs, mainly just because of where they start. A little bit of upside, I guess, but not that much. I'd rather play Carson Hocevar, who starts 28th, who doesn't always get the results. But again, starting 28th, depending on this, the type of race we're going to get today, he's just much safer. Gives you a lot more upside. There's less that Hocevar has to do, to score well and have a good day versus what you need out of Gibbs, Gilliland, or Busher to get a similar style score. Austin Dillon, Josh Berry start a little bit too far forward. Daniel Suarez, starts on the second half of the field. Good car, going to have interest. Ryan Preece starts a little bit too far forward. Jones, Gregson, Haley, these are all, good options in the player pool for sure. AJ Allmendinger and Ty Dillon, maybe, again, they start mid-pack. Probably won't see the same amount of ownership as like the Suarez's, the Hosevars, the Reddicks, but they really don't start that much different. Starting position wise. So I kind of like them for tournament, pivot plays, kind of some lower owned guys. Zane Smith, pretty cool to see him get in the pole, but he offers you no place differential upside. So even if he wins the race today, there's a good chance he gets outscored by these place differential plays. Cole Custer, he starts 12th. Not really that much upside there. I'd actually rather play Riley Herbst just because he starts further back in the field. I'm not trying to simplify it by any means, but really that's what I'm looking at. What drivers start deep in the field. I'm really not too concerned about the driver name or the price. It's really just what drivers give us some place differential upside. And John Hunter Nemechek, SVG, Anthony Alfredo, they all do that. Now, yes, once you get down here, the equipment and the teams aren't as good. They probably aren't going to be able to work with as many teams. They are probably most likely to lose the lead pack, maybe fall a couple of laps down. But even if they do, like it really just depends on when the cautions come out. Like these guys can easily get back on the lead lap, or even if they finish the race a couple of laps down, as long as they finish the race and we get some accidents today, them finishing 20th or 25th is not out of the question by any means. Um, BJ McLeod starts deep. You know, people won't want to play him because of who he is and his equipment and his price, but he starts 38th, so he really can only go forward. You can make the same argument for Cody Ware and JJ Yeley. The only problem with Yeley is even if he just had the run out there by himself for 188 laps, um, the equipment durability is in question there. So he's a guy that, maybe you want to stay away from a little bit. I'm still going to have some ownership, but that's going to do it for the Cup Series video today. Hopefully that was helpful. We'll catch you guys on the next one, but good luck today, and we'll catch you next week.